Welcome to the Retire with Peace podcast, the podcast where we help you create a fulfilling and stress-free retirement. Each week, we bring you expert advice, practical tips, and inspiring stories to help you plan and live your best retirement life. Whether you're nearing retirement or already enjoying your golden years, this podcast is here to support you every step of the way. Let's embark on this journey together and discover how to retire with peace.
Welcome back to the Retire with Peace podcast. As always, I'm your host, Dave Zaegel, and we are in the middle of an exciting series on inherited IRAs. This is the third video in the series. If you have not gone back and watched or listened to the first two, please do so. There's a ton of detail in there. I'm sure a lot of people had to probably re-listen or re-watch because there's just a ton of very specific items and specific rules and different types of beneficiaries. There's just a lot going on with these. And that's why I always encourage people, when you inherit money, don't be in a rush. So make sure we're doing this properly. So when you inherit money, first thing is just stop, just pause, make sure you've gathered all the information that you need. You just want to make sure you're doing this properly and don't mess up any rules along the way. So if you inherit money, fine. Just make sure you're deliberate about this. Don't rush. Don't do a whole bunch of stuff because there's a lot of things you cannot undo. So I don't want to stress people out when I say that, but just know that you don't need to be in a hurry. Just pause for a second, make sure you've gathered all the information and know what all those rules are. So go back to the first two episodes that we had to learn more about the different beneficiary rules and calculations and required distributions and time periods over which you must distribute money. Those first two episodes are packed full of information. This is a little bit more on planning, specifically for Roth IRA accounts. Because in the most recent video we did, the episode talked about how should we take distributions over a 10-year period. Because you might not be required to take a whole lot initially, or in some cases you might not be required to take any at all. But you only have 10 years over which to take this money out. So if you took nothing out or very little out in the early years, you might get slammed with a big tax bill in year 10 when you're required to fully liquidate all the account. So that's really where we need to look at your situation and say, what do I expect my income to be for the next 10 years? You won't get it perfect, but you'll have a general idea. And then figure out, what should I be doing each year along the way to minimize the total tax burden over this 10-year period? Because if this money's coming out of a traditional IRA, it's all going to be added to your ordinary income and taxed at your highest tax bracket, wherever that distribution puts you in. So if you're already in the 24% tax bracket, let's say, and you start adding money on, it's going to be at least 24% federal. It could bump you up into those 30s from a tax rate perspective. So there's a lot of other calculations with additional Medicare tax, all that stuff. We're not going to go super into detail, but just know that it's going to hit your top tax rates when you're adding that IRA income in. So we need to look at a longer term plan and say, what do I expect the next 10 years to be? It may be the case where you wait and just take it all in the 10th year, but also may be the case where you don't take a whole lot for the next 4 years because you're still going to be working. But after that, you plan on retiring and you'll be taking a lot more because your earned income is going to be lower at that point in time. So it's really going to be specific to you and your situation in terms of how much you take out over that 10-year period each year, just as long as you make sure that you are following any required distribution rules if those are there. And again, we talked about that in our last episode. Even better would be if you inherited Roth IRA money. So think about that when you're looking at your own retirement planning and who you might be leaving money to if there's money left over. The more that you can do to get that into a Roth, not only could it benefit you, it's probably going to benefit those that inherit the money because they are not going to be taxed on any of that Roth IRA money as long as they follow all the usual Roth IRA rules. But in most cases, if they are inheriting money and let's say they're over 59 and a half, so there's not going to be any penalty to take it out. There wouldn't be anyway because it's inherited money. But especially if they're older and they're in their higher earnings years, if they can inherit a Roth IRA and have all of that be tax-free, that's an amazing place to be. So when you're thinking about your own retirement planning and all the benefits of Roth IRA conversions and getting money over into a Roth, which we talk about constantly on this podcast, don't only think about your benefit, think about the person that's inheriting the money. When they inherit the money, it's tax-free and there is no annual required distribution. They still are subject to that 10-year window, but this is a great deal because if they don't need that money, they can leave it in there and let it grow completely tax-free for 10 years and then take the money out all tax-free. It's a fantastic benefit to the person inheriting the money. So it's just really, really nice for those that inherit the money to not have to be worrying about any required distributions, any taxes, nothing. The reason there's no required distributions for inherited IRAs is because there's no required distribution for any Roth IRA. So if you inherit a Roth IRA, just like the person that had the Roth IRA initially, there's no required distribution. So when we talk about the traditional IRA in our last episode, the key question was, did that person die before their required beginning date for their required distributions? In the Roth IRA, that doesn't matter because there is no required beginning date ever. It's a Roth. So we don't have to worry about it when we inherit the money either. So it's just really nice, not only from a tax perspective, but also logistically. You can pick and choose when you're taking this money out. Penalty-free, tax-free. It's an awesome way to go. So when we're talking about your retirement planning, yes, we want to make sure that we're minimizing taxes for you over the long term, but we also want to look at it from the perspective of, can we minimize taxes for those that might inherit money from you in the future?